We'll get started as we are on Facebook. We'll start the prayers to the Special Master. Here we go. And we are broadcasting here on the Facebook. Thank you so much, dear devotees, for joining us here on Facebook as well as on our Zoom call.
Dandavat pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Dandavat pranam, Satapa Mataji. Okay, so which verse are we going to do today?
4.26, Mataji.
4.26 says Archana Mataji for 500 points. Fantastic, and that is correct. So we will go into 4.26 shortly after we have finished the prayers to the Special Master. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamulam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande Hare Hare Gaur. Okay, so let us get started. 4.26. So let's do a quick recap of what we have been talking about. Then anybody remember some of the concepts that we have been taking up in the past few weeks that we have been here on these Friday calls?
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat pranam. Mataji, last week we have discussed about the sacrifices, like various kinds of sacrifice we were talking. And, the people, they are worshipping demigods just because they want some kind of material possessions. And a person who is in Krishna consciousness, that devotee, he or she will sacrifice all of his material possession for the satisfaction of the Lord, who is nothing, who is the Supreme Lord Vishnu, because he is also known as the yajna, the sacrifice. So that's what I recall.
Nice. Yeah, so that was one of the things that people offer sacrifices. So they give away their material possessions to the demigods, but it's not true and the ideal sacrifice because they're doing it for some gain, as you said. And there was one more sacrifice that was described.
Yeah, Mataji. I think so.
Let Vashana tell you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Go ahead, please.
You got one. Yagya.
Mataji, they make sacrifice to the demigods to get the
that you already covered.
Oh.
That you already covered. So I'm talking about the second one. There were two types of sacrifices that were talked about. You can open the book and see the translation. One is sacrifice to the demigods. What else?
To the fire. The sacrifice to the fire. The Supreme Brahman.
I don't know, but just your daily living, like, I mean, anything and any work that you do. I don't know if that's sacrifice, but
They sacrifice to the Vishnu, which is known as a yajna. And
What do they sacrifice? There were two ways,
they
right?
sacrifice their possessions.
We already talked about
Yes.
that, right? One is that.
And,
I'm asking for the second one. What is the second one?
and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge.
And what do you sacrifice? What do they think they are sacrificing? So we had talked about that there is a sacrificial arena in which you put your material possessions, your bananas and your ghee, right? That is one way, right? And then there was another sacrifice where you put the soul itself into the fire of Brahma Jyoti. So Brahma Jyoti also looks like fire, right? Because there's light coming from it. So these are the jnanis who go and they think that they're going to merge, and they think that they're going to annihilate their very existence, right? So they're going to think that there will be no distinction. I will just go and merge into the Lord. So I am sacrificing my identity. That is what they think they are doing, but that doesn't happen, right? So Krishna is talking about, and in the previous verse, which was Brahmanagna Brahma Have, right? Where he was saying that everything that you do is an act of sacrifice. And so for a few verses from now onwards, we will see many examples that Krishna is going to give, right? Many examples Krishna is going to give on how you can ultimately, how in your staying in your life, you can do sacrifices, right? So two we have covered, right? Two we have covered, and hold on one second. Okay, to take care of this.
Mataji, are we sacrificing our fruitive works?
And elaborate that a little bit more on that. What was your intention, or what was your understanding of sacrificing the fruitive work? What is fruitive work? Let's first ask that question.
Whatever we are doing in everyday's life, and we are expecting the fruits of that actions.
Right. So where is the sacrifice? Sacrifice means to give away something, right?
Yeah, yes. Mataji.
What are we giving away? When you say that I'm sacrificing my fruitive activities, what are you giving away?
The results.
The result, right?
Yes.
So you are giving away the results of fruitive activities, and to whom are you giving it away?
Krishna.
Right. So is that talked about in last week's chapter? That type of sacrifice where you are giving things to Krishna?
No,
Translation.
to Brahman
Of your sacrifice of your material possessions, where was it given? To whom was it given? Sacrifice of your material possession.
to demigods.
To demigods. Right. So Tapa, in this verse, they are not talking about giving your things to Krishna, right? We are talking about giving. Who gave all his things to Krishna? Famous example.
Bali Maharaj.
Bali Maharaj. Very good. Yeah. That's a classic example. Sarvasmatma nivedane balirabhut. Right? So this is Krishna Ptiresham Param. So how do you how can you attain Krishna? So there are different examples given. And so how did Bali Maharaj attain Krishna? By giving away Sarvasmatma, right? So he gave up everything, including himself, when he said, in the end, that put your foot on my head, because that meant he would die, right? Such a big Vaman had taken that roop, right? Vishal roop, and Trivikrama roop, Trivikram. And so when a man is so giant that he can put his legs and go foot and then go all the way up to the top of the universe, if that person puts his foot on our head is going to be crushed for sure, right? Such a big head, such a big foot. But Bali Maharaj said, yes, you can put your third foot over here on my head. So that was a sacrifice he did of all his things, everything, because he possessed the entire universe. He was the Lord of the universe, right? He had defeated the demigods. He possessed everything. So he gave away all that. And after that, he also said, okay, now you can take away my life also. So that was a classic example and a very famous example of how you give things to Krishna, right? So in this chapter, he's not talking about just giving your things to Krishna. It's okay for you to think like that because you're devotees, right? But Krishna is addressing the Bhagavad-gita to multiple people, multiple types of, audience will be there, who will be reading the Bhagavad-gita later on also. So all that is there. And so now for the couple of few verses, he is going to talk about and tell you that what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna. And remember, why is Krishna telling all this to Arjuna? What is Krishna's aim? What does he want? Ultimate for Arjuna?
To fight for the
war, right? Yeah. War. He wants Arjuna to fight for the war, right? And Arjuna has already given a big discourse. He's already given a big discourse in chapter 1 to Krishna on why he should not fight. So now Krishna is counteracting his statements by bringing in all these kinds of things, right? Ultimately, it's like, you get up and you fight. That's what his aim is. So he's saying, because Arjuna had said in chapter number 1 that, then better I should just, give up all these things, go up to the Himalayas. So people sometimes might just think that, if I have to go back to God, I don't have to do anything. I will just go and sit and do yajna to Vishnu. I will sacrifice all my material possessions. That is the way, right? But Krishna here is telling to Arjuna that there are many ways in which you can sacrifice things, and people can in many ways generally sacrifice their things to Krishna, right? And we had brought up, so in chapter 12 of Bhagavad-gita, right? We had talked about that last time also. And so in chapter 12 of Bhagavad-gita, Krishna had told him that, what you should do is you should engage your mind in me. Mayi eva mana ādhatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, niveshasi na eva ata urdhvam na sanshaya. He says, do not doubt. If you put your mind and you engage your mind in me, then you're definitely going to get me. Do not doubt. It's guarantee. I'm giving you that guarantee. But then he knows that this is Kali Yuga is going to come, and it will be very difficult for us to concentrate our mind. So he says, Atha chittam samhādhatum na saknosi mayi sthiram. He says, if you're not able to do this, that is to engage your mind in me, then abhyasa yogena tatho mam ichhaptum dhanajya. So if you cannot sit still and, sit in a lotus pose and just think just about Krishna, he says, then do some abhyas yoga. Do some abhyas. And basically what abhyas he's talking, he's not talking play the guitar, that's also practice, play the cricket, I'm doing cricket practice. No, what he's saying by abhyas here is deity worship. So you have to get up in the morning, you have to ring the bell, you have to offer water, you have to offer flower, you have to offer fire, you have to offer, smell, and so on and so forth, food, cloth. So there is a practice that you do, there are steps that you follow, you keep on following it, right? Mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. So then you will develop the desire to gain me, right? So that if you are that level in your devotional service, then you do that, right? Abhyas yogena tato mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. Abhyase api asaktosi. Then we say, oh, Krishna, I can't do that. That's too much of rules and regulations. 3 times a day you are asking me to do this. Very difficult. I can't do that. Abhyase api asaktosi kartum mat yogam ashritaha sarva karma phalat. Then he says, engage yourself in do some work from me. Right? Abhyase api asmartosi mat karma paramo bhava madhartam api karmani purvam siddhim apapasi. So he says, then you do something for me. If you can't then do some work. Go to the temple, clean this, clean that, do printing, make a ratha for the yatra, do whatever. Yeah, do some work with your hands. And then he knows that we are going to come back and we're going to say that, Krishna, I don't have the time. I have work. I have family, I have kids, I have husband, I have job, I have got career. All these things take up all my time, 24/7. I just got a new job. It's difficult. Like that. He knows we're going to say that, right? So, mat karma paramo bhava madhartam api karmani kurvan siddhim avaptasi. You will attain perfection. And then he says, athetad api ashaktosi kartum mat yogam ashritaha sarva karma phala tyaga tatha kuru yatatmaman. So he says, if you are not able to do even that, if you say temple is too far away, there is no temple, right? If I'm not able to do all that, if you're not able to do that, then he says, sarva karma phala tyagam. Sarva karma phala tyagam. So he says, now what Sutapa was saying, that you give up the results of your work. So most of the time, whatever we do, whatever work we obtain, whatever work we do, the results are money, or anything you buy from that money are the results. Majority of the cases, those are the results of our work. And so Krishna is saying, you give away some of that. Right? So he has shown us a hierarchy. So this last part, which is, at this level where you are giving up these things of the hierarchy, then if you're at that level of the hierarchy, slowly you will rise up the ladder, and ultimately you'll achieve perfection. It's just that different people are at different stages of devotional service and perfection in devotional service. So here in this verse that we talked about yesterday, 4.25, we were talking about giving up your possessions to demigods. So at least, you're accepting that there is some higher authority there. There's some higher authority. You still don't know the demigods actually are not God. They are demigods. That's why they call demigods. That's why they call Devta and not Bhagavan, right? So we do not know, but at least, through the Devtas, slowly giving up these things, giving up these, our material possessions, etc., we will learn how to give. And so, because it is very difficult to give, right? And when you give something to Krishna, you will somehow, in your thoughts are going to linger in your mind that, oh, I gave to Krishna, I gave less to Krishna, I gave too much to Krishna. Either ways, you're thinking about Krishna like that, right? So there's a very famous example, there's a story that I heard one of our teachers say, and that was that there was a temple and the artik was happening at the temple. And in the artik, after the arti, the person comes out with their thal, right, which has got the fire on it, right? And everybody goes and does this, and there's some donations. You will put that donation on that plate. Right? So there was a line there, and people were kind of, the person was lying there to do the darshan, and the person was bringing the thal to collect the donations. So there was a person, like 3 lines ahead, and so he put some money. Then the one behind him put some money. And then the thal came to this person. And this person, he went through his pockets and this and that. And then there was a wad of notes. And from there, he took out like a 1 rupee note. And he put it in the thal, although he had bigger currency notes in his. So just 1 rupee, he put it there. And then he stuffed everything. And then the thal person, went this way. Then he went to the person behind the one who had just given a 1 rupee. And so while all this was happening, this person who was standing behind this, he tapped the shoulder of the person in front of him and gave him a 100 rupee note. 100 rupee note. And so this person took that 100 rupee note and he put it into when the thal person came to him, he put it into the thal. So as soon as he put it in the thal, the person went forward. Then the one at the back again tapped his bag and he said, Prabhu, that note, that 100 rupee bill had fallen from your pocket. I was just returning it to you. And so, Krishna can take also. So it's better we give it to Krishna first before he takes it away by hook or by crook. And in the story of Vamana, Krishna took it away by crook, right? He cheated Bali, but he took it away because Bali was in a Asur family. It was not right. It was not the right way to organize things in this universe, that to have somebody from Asur family manage the affairs of this world. The Devtas are designated to do that, and they should be doing that. So Krishna will do these kinds of things, right? So our idea is that, we learn how to give. We learn how to give. And in giving, there is a lot of pleasure. And you get more pleasure in giving than in receiving. After some time, we will realize that, right? I mean, I remember this, there was a long time ago, and about 50 years ago, I saw a movie where there was this young girl, she is like 15, 16, and it's her grandmother's birthday. So she goes to the grandmother. Grandmother is very old and sick and, has heart attack and all those kind of things, and on a very strict diet. And this girl comes and, gives her grandma a box of chocolate and as a gift. And this box of chocolate, this box, that variety, the flavor of the chocolate is actually not the grandmother's favorite. It's her own favorite brand of chocolate and flavor. And she knows that, she's not going to take it because she's on a special diet. I'm going to get it back. And so let me better buy something that I like, right? Because that is not, people give, but that's not the right attitude behind the giving, right? So Krishna will tell to Arjuna in the next several verses that, what are the different ways in which you can give things, right? So just keep that in mind as we go through these various weeks. We will be talking about, different ways in which Krishna is going to tell us about that, right? So we'll bring up today's verse 4.26 and we will go a little deeper into this, right? So we saw in number 25 that we can do sacrifices to the demigods, or we can think of sacrificing ourselves in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Right? So then we are talking about 4.26. Shrotradinindriyananye samyagnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananya indriyagnishu juhvati. Shrotradinindriyananye samyam agnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananya indriyagnishu juhvati. Shrotradinindriyananye samyam agnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananya indriyagnishu juhvati. So let's look at the synonyms here. Shrotra adini, such as the hearing process. So shrotra, etc. Adini is etc. So shrotra adini, such as the hearing process, or hearing process and others, or hearing process, etc. That's what we mean. Indriyani, you already know, senses. Anye, others. Samyam, of restraint. Agnishu, in the fires. Juhvati, offer. Shabdadin, shabd adin, sound vibration. So adin, adini, right? So which means etc. Sound vibration, etc. Vishayan, objects of sense gratification. Anye, others. Indriya, of the sense organs. Agnishu, in the fires. Juhvati, they sacrifice. Okay, so let's look at the translation. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. So some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process in the senses of the fire of, and the senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. The members of purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The members of the 4 divisions of human life, namely the brahmachari, the grihastha, and the vanaprastha, and the sannyasi, all are meant to become perfect yogis or transcendentalists. Since human life is not meant for our enjoying sense gratification like the animals, the 4 orders of human life are so arranged that one may become perfect in spiritual life. The brahmacharis, or students under the care of a bona fide spiritual master, control the mind by abstaining from sense gratification. A brahmachari hears only words containing Krishna consciousness. Hearing is the basic principle for understanding. Therefore, the pure brahmachari engages fully in Hare Namanu Kirtanam, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. He restrains himself from the vibrations of material sounds, and his hearing is engaged in the transcendental sound vibration of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Similarly, the householders who have some license for sense gratification perform such acts with great restraint. Sex life, intoxication, and meat eating are general tendencies of human society, but a regulated householder does not indulge in unrestricted sex life, and other sense gratification. Marriage on the principles of religious life is therefore current in all civilized human society because that is the way for restricted sex life. This restricted, unattached sex life is also a kind of yajna because the restricted householder sacrifices his general tendency towards sense gratification for a higher transcendental life. Om Tat Sat. So very powerful statement here by Krishna to Arjuna, right? So he was talking about Shraddha-devi, Shraddha-adini. Shraddha means ears, right? So the hearing. So adini means etc. So what are the other senses that we have? Shraddha is hearing is one.
Seeing.
Eyes,
Smelling.
yeah. Seeing is smelling, smelling, and
Tongue.
tasting.
Mouth, tongue.
Sense of taste, not mouth. Sense of taste, tongue, yeah. And then
Sense of touch, Mother.
sense of touch, right? So you see the organs that you have. Ear is one organ, eyes is another, nose, tongue, and then skin. Did you realize that skin is all over the body?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Very dangerous sense organ, right? So sense of touch. And so he's saying Shraddha-devi means adini, Shrotra, etc. So Krishna is saying that the unadulterated brahmachari. Unadulterated means pure brahmachari, right? Pure brahmachari means he's always been a brahmachari from his young age, right? Ever since he was born, he's a brahmachari. So what happens is he's saying that this unadulterated brahmacharis, what to do? They are sacrificing their senses. And where are they sacrificing the senses? They are sacrificing them in the fire of mental control. So they're always controlling their senses, which means that there are these knowledge acquiring senses, but then there are other senses also, right? There are 5 more. Thank you. What are the other 5 senses that we have? There is Jnanendriya. What about the Karmendriyas? Anybody has Karmendriyas or no? Only I have them.
Mother, hands, legs, these are karmendriyas.
There are more.
Speaking. You're speaking.
Tongue, yeah.
Speech, tongue, and
Genitals, Mataji.
Right. So, an excretory system, right? Genitals and excretion. So these are also, Shraddha-dini means all of them they are going to control, right? And so they will not hear. And Shraddha-dini, why does it start from Shraddha? Because hearing is very powerful. Hearing is a very powerful sense organ. Because when all of the sense organs are not active, the ear is still active. Like when you're going to sleep, then none of it is working, right? You're not walking when you're sleeping, so on and so forth, right? But the ear is still active. It's very, very important, right? So, Shrotra-adini. So let's now combine the tongue and the ear together. Okay? So a brahmachari will hear only Krishna Katha. He will not hear anything else. Not hear anything else. So among the 6 types of listeners which are mentioned in the Bhagavad Mahatmya, Srimad Bhagavatam Mahatmya, the first one is like the Swati bird. And what does the Swati bird do? It will only drink the first drop of nectar, first drop of rain that falls from the sky. It won't go and take water from the rivers or lakes or ponds. Even if it has to die, it will die of thirst, but will not. It will only take that water. Similarly, brahmacharis will only hear Krishna Katha. They won't hear anything else. Like that. Right? So, Chaitanya, and then talking. So hearing. And so I was listening to one of the lectures, and where the speakers mentioned something very nice, and that was that we hear things, right? We hear things on the television, and he was saying one of the measures of success or progress in your devotional service is that TV chuta ki nahi chuta. Basically, have you given up television or not given up television? And he says if you're still watching television, then you're not a pure devotee yet. And when he meant television for mundane topics, right? If you're watching television and you're watching Krishna Katha on a television, somebody is broadcasting on television, you're watching it, that's fine, right? So we have to be very, very careful. And actually, Gandhiji is very famous for some of the things, right? His, in this context, does anybody, can somebody guess what I'm trying to say? Gandhiji was very famous for trying to tell us this thing. Gandhiji ke
Teen bandar.
Teen bandar.
Right? So there are monkeys. He was saying monkeys. And what were those monkeys doing?
Closing the eyes, closing the ears, and keeping the hands on the mouth.
Yeah, is that right? So they are just saying Indriyan, it's just saying control. So he's teaching you the same thing, Bhagavad-gita. Right? Indriyani, anya, indrananya. So this one and this one and this one. And then the last one is this, one who closes this.
Sure.
Right? That's the verse. Verse of the monkey. We are monkeys, right? You're doing like this on the monkey, right? So there's a very nice verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I'm going to just share with you. And this is the instructions that he's given to Raghunath Das Goswami, right? Who's one of the 6 Goswamis. So he says, Gramya katha na sunibe, Gramya varta na kahibe, bhala na khaibe ara bhala na paribe. So this is, he's instructing to Raghunath Das Goswami, who's going to be, he came from a very rich family. Ultimately, he left everything there and he joined Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had assigned Sarup Damodar to give him all the teachings. And then he said, well, anyway, if you want to still learn from me, then take these as the instructions coming from me. And what? In one simple shloka, he's covered everything. Gramya katha na shunibe, gramya katha na kahibe, bhalana kahibe ara bhalana kari paribe. Do not talk like people in general or hear what they say. You should not eat very palatable food, nor should you dress very nicely. Because he's a sannyasi. So he's saying, don't talk this, don't talk that, don't talk nonsense, don't indulge in this, don't indulge in that, right? So, and he talks about Gramya Katha na Shunibe. So he starts with, do not listen. Do not listen to Gramya Katha. Right? And if you want to know the effects of listening, right? Effects of listening. Let me bring up a nice expert. So this is an excerpt that I'm going to bring up from the Ramayana today for a change. Usually we go to Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the Ramayana, this is before Lord Ramchandra was coronated, right? So Maharaj Dashrath, he knew that he already had kids at a very late stage in life, right? He didn't have kids, and then he went to the sage and he got mangoes and he, divided them and all that, right? So we know that's how Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughan were born. And then, of course, everybody loved Ram, and Dashrath knew that he was advancing in age, so it's better for him to, give up everything and put a nice son on the throne and go to Vanaprastha. That was what people did in those days. So he talked to all his people, to his court, and they all unanimously said that Ramchandra should be coronated and he should become the higher apparent, like that, right? So So then, when he does the news of Ram's installation, which means to become the future king, quickly spread around the city, delighting everyone. The temples were thronged with people offering gifts and worshipping the gods. As evening fell, the city streets were filled with a flurry of joyous citizens. The large crowds of men moving about Ayodhya resembled the tossing waves of the ocean. Everyone spoke only of the installation. Poets and bards composed songs about the occasion. Flags were hoisted high on the rooftops, and garlands of forest flowers were draped everywhere. Colorful festoons hung around the streets. I want you to close your eyes and visualize, which was swept and sprinkled with perfumed water. Shining lamps hung from every tree lining the streets. The city echoed everywhere with the loud chanting of wedding hymns. Elephants and bulls roared on all sides, and the whole atmosphere throbbed with excitement. No one could wait for sunrise when the ceremony would commence. In the palace of Kaikeyi, the king's youngest queen, there was a hunchbacked maidservant called Manthara. Upon seeing the celebrations, Manthara approached Ram's former nurse and inquired, "What occasion gives rise to this display of delight on every side? Is the emperor going to perform some great sacrifice?" The nurse, her face blooming with happiness, told Manthara about the king's decision to install Ram as the heir apparent. "Tomorrow, under favorable stars, our Lord Dashrath will give to the sinless Ram the office of Prince Regent. What great occasion for joy could there be?" Manthara's mind recoiled with this news. So she heard something, Shraddha-devi. She was immediately seized with anger upon hearing this. Surely this was disaster. With Ram installed as a king, her mistress Kaikeyi would soon fall out of favor, her own son Bharat being left as nothing more than Ram's servant. Manthara raged within herself. She had long enjoyed special privileges as Kaikeyi's senior maidservant. The emperor particularly liked her mistress, who had given Manthara the esteem she desired. As a hunchback, she had always been the butt of jokes and abuse among other servants. But as her mistress became more influential, the other servants, even those of the senior queen Kaushalya, had been obliged to pay her respect. Sighing with anxiety, Manthara ran to Kaikeyi's room, where she found the queen lying upon a couch. With her face flushed, she began addressing her bemused mistress in harsh tones. "Give up, foolish woman. How can you lay there when calamity stares you in the face? You languish here at ease, even as flood of misery sweeps towards you. Thoroughly neglected by your husband, you are threatened now with utter ruin." Kaikeyi looked affectionately at her servant. Manthara had been her childhood nurse, and Kaikeyi saw her like her own mother. The queen had not heard the news about Rama, and she inquired from Manthara, "Pray tell me, what causes you sorrow at this time? You seem sorely afflicted." Manthara became even more incensed upon hearing Kaikeyi's question. She replied in a low, trembling voice with anger, "There is no doubt the disaster now threatens us both. With your destruction will come mine, as much as with your good fortune rests mine. I am therefore saying this only for your benefit." She grasps Kaikeyi's hand, trying to impress upon her mistress what appeared to her to be obvious facts. Although born in a royal line, you seem ignorant of the ways of the king. A king will speak sweet words to a person while at the same time planning their destruction. The emperor has acted as your beloved spouse while performing deeds which will ruin you to the very roots. Kaikeyi sat up and looked at her servant curiously. Manthara's eyes blazed as she continued, "Having sent your own son Bharat away to a distant kingdom, this wicked king now plans to install Ram as the prince regent. What greater misfortune could there be for you?" Kaikeyi smiled. She loved Ram as much as her own dear son, while Ram, for his part, looked upon Kaikeyi as being equal to his own mother Kaushalya. She felt a surge of joy upon hearing Manthara's report. She could not understand why Manthara was disturbed. Why was she so vehement? If anyone else had spoken about Dashratha and Ram in such a way, she would have them punished. But Kaikeyi was accustomed to her servant's sullen temperament. She felt there was no malice in Manthara, despite her often angry expressions. Taking from her bosom a necklace of brilliant diamonds set in gold, Kaikeyi handed it to her servant, saying, "My dear Dhatri, this is surely the best news you have ever brought me. My heart swells with pleasure at hearing your words, which seem to be like nectar. I wish to reward you. Take this gift and tell me if there is anything else I can do for you." Manthara threw down the necklace and began rebuking Kaikeyi. "This is no occasion for joy, foolish lady. What strange frame of mind has seized you? An ocean of grief threatens to overwhelm you, and yet you stand here smiling? Your stepson Ram will become king while your own son Bharat is left aside. Bharat's claim to the throne is the same as Ram's, and thus Ram will see him as an enemy. Lakshman serves only Ram, and Shatrugha serves your son. Therefore, it is only Ram or Bharat who may be crowned as the sovereign of this world. My mind quakes with fear to think of the danger to your son from this powerful Ram once he is king. Mantra's eyes grew bloodshot with fury and her face whitened as she spoke. Why was Kekeyi not understanding? Kaushalya had long been snubbed by the king in favor of Kekeyi. When Ram became the king, that would change. Kaushalya would be exalted to the highest level, where Kekeyi would lose her special position as the king's most favorite consort. Kaushalya would certainly exact her revenge for her long-suffering Kekeyi, who would become Kaushalya's maidservant, and Bharat would be at best Ram's servant. More likely, he would be exiled. Where would that leave Kekeyi's servants? Praying to the gods to help her, the hunchback maid became more ardent in her plea. You must do something. This is great disaster. Once the crown has passed to the other side of your family, you will in time see your own side sink into oblivion, bereft of all royal fortune. Hearing this talk submission from her servant, the beautiful Kekeyi thought of Rama. She could not imagine him bearing any ill will towards Bharata. Mantra's fear were quite groundless. Rama always acted in perfect accord with religious principles. He was devoted to truth, discipline, and always kind. He doubtlessly deserved to be king. After he was crowned, he would surely look after his younger brothers like a father. Mantra had no reason to feel such distress. Kekeyi chided her gently. When such an occasion for rejoicing has come, you should by no means give way to grief, my dear maidservant, nor should you think ill of Ram. My son Bharat will be in no danger from Ram, and in the future he may well succeed him to the throne. There is no need for lamentation. Mantra would not be placated. In order to improve her own position, she wanted her mistress to be the mother of the king. Blinded by her own greed and envy, Mantra considered the emperor to be acted from similar motivations. She continued to besiege Kekeyi in increasingly rancorous tones. Surely it is due only to stupidity that you fail to see your impending doom, O deluded one. Ram will be crowned king, and after him will come his son. Where then will Bharat be left? Not all the kings of a son can assume the throne. It falls only to the one among them. Having taken hold of the throne, Ram will ensure that it goes to his own son, if necessary by banishing Bharat, or perhaps even by sending him to the next world. You and your line will be lost and forsaken. I am here to awaken you to a great peril now arrived at your door. Do not disregard me. Mantra's lofty position in the palace had gone to her head. She was furious at the prospect of losing her status, and she continued to present many arguments to her mistress. She played upon the natural rivalry existing between the king's co-wives. Kekeyi's affection for Ram was deep, and the discussion went back and forth for some time, but gradually Mantra began to change her mistress's mind. By the gods' arrangement, her argument swayed Kekeyi's mind, and the queen's intelligence became confused. Although she loved Ram, she began to consider that his installation was an injustice. Mantra saw in Kekeyi's face that her mind was wavering. She grasped the queen's hand. There is a way by which we may not be ruined. If Ram can be sent to the forest and Bharat installed in his place, then the sovereignty may be secured in your line. This idea had entered Mantra's mind by the sudden inspiration of the gods. Kekeyi, intrigued, looked at her servant. How can this be accomplished? Mantra recalled a story she had heard from her mistress many years earlier. Some time ago, you told me how you went with your husband when he was assisting Indra in a battle against the demons. Having fought hard one day, your husband lay unconscious in the battlefield, his body severely wounded. A grave danger beset him then from a demon who would come at night to devour the bodies of the warriors still on the battlefield. Kekeyi remembered the incidents. Many years back, the emperor had gone to the heavens, taking Kekeyi with him. He was famed as an invincible warrior, and the gods had asked his assistance in a fight. At that time, he had fought so powerfully that his chariot appeared to be facing 10 directions simultaneously, and the gods had therefore named him Dasharatha, or 10 chariots. Mantra continued, at that time, seeing the danger to Dasharatha, you rode out in a chariot and rescued your lord. Upon recovering, he offered you a couple of boons, but you deferred them to a time when you might need them most. Surely, that time has now come. Go to Dashratha and ask that he banish Ram and install Bharat in his place as the prince regent. In this way, we shall both be saved. Despite her love for her husband and her attachment for Ram, Kaikeyi became convinced by Manthra's argument. She was upset. How could the king have treated her in such a way? He was always so kind and loving. Was all that just a show to win her favor? She began to feel angry. The king might have spoken so many sweet words to her, but by his behavior, it was obvious that he favored Kaushalya. They had probably even conspired together to have Bharata sent away. Why had she not realized it before? It was obvious. Now the whole situation was revealed. Dashratha had shown his real feelings by completely neglecting her and favoring Kaushalya's son instead. Kaikeyi heaved a doleful sigh. Your suggestion finds favor with me, Manthra. I shall this very moment go before the king and ask him of these boons. Manthra's mind was full of cunning. Her eyes narrowed. You should ask that Ram be banished for no less than 14 years. Within that time, your son Bharat will become dear to the people and he will be firmly established on the throne. So I will stop here. What do you say? The rest is history. You all know, so I don't have to repeat that. What did you hear in this narration?
Well, I just thought of how KK became so just from hearing her maidservant, speaking this way, it influenced her so much just from hearing. So
just from hearing, right? And completely swayed in the opposite direction, right? She was the one who loved Ram. She loved Ram more than her own son Bharat. But just by Shraddha-devi Dasi. Shraddha-adi. Shraddha-adini Indriyani Anya, right? So Shraddha-adini means Shraddha, etc. So you have to control your hearing, you have to control your eating, control your smell, control your everything, right? Like that. Adini, etc. Anya means others. So why is he saying others? Because in the previous verse, he has said that some sacrifice their possessions to the demigods, some want to sacrifice themselves in the Brahmajyoti, and now he's saying some others will sacrifice their senses themselves and the objects of their senses by putting them in the fire of mental control. So mind is also the sixth sense, and they will use that sixth sense. They'll use their mind to control all the other senses that they have, right? And of the senses, the most powerful sense is the sense of hearing. So they start by killing the important one. Right? Sumi, is that an old hand that you have raised? Or okay.
Sorry, yeah. I was just agreeing.
No problem. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's the agreement sign. Okay. All right. So yeah. So you can use some other reaction. Yeah, I use that to think that somebody wants to speak like that. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji, that is so profound, right? Kaikeyi just heard the fact that it is possibility that she will lose her position, right? That's what Mantra used. And that sentence changed everything. So how much, even we see it I see it in myself, that how much it is that losing of the false position that I feel relate to, right? The power that we want makes you do something that you are not even thinking. So it changes the course 180 degree. So and that is just by hearing, having that fear. So that is very powerful. Like whenever we have any thoughts, we always have to ask, like, what is in the center that I'm putting, Krishna or my
own self. Okay, we lost you, Khyati. We lost the connection. Yeah. So we all are Kaikeyis in our own right. That's what basically she's saying, right?
Yes, that is very true.
Yeah. And so Shraddha-devi Dasi, and I just wanted to bring up a few verses that have been brought. Okay, but before I go into that, she also used one more sense. when she was talking to Kekai, she was also engaging in one more senses. She was also utilizing one more sense organ, Mantara. Did you notice what she was doing? Every now and then, she was talking.
She was using her intelligence actually in the beginning. She said that no,
Yeah,
it cannot be true.
Intelligent is not
No.
sense organ. I'm looking at sense organ.
Yeah.
What other? Sound is one. Definitely she was using sound. What else was she doing?
Using her eyes, but
Yeah.
I don't know how her I mean, she was glaring at her. So like looking.
Right. So what she was doing was she was using expressions, heaving a sigh and all that, right? She was doing all that. And KK is seeing that. KK is seeing the expression on her face. So she's engaging KK's ears. She engaged KK's eyes, right? What else did she engage?
Well,
She
her
would,
memory.
in case you missed it, she was clasping her hand every now and then. She would hold her hand.
Touch.
Sense of touch. She was doing everything. And that combination, just did it. Right? And so here, I'd like to bring up a verse and submit it as evidence here. Very interesting thing to see how these things happen in this world is that second chapter, as a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Prabhupada says, unless all the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambarish, all the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. And that's why in today's verse they are saying, Shraddha-devi Indriyani Anne. all of them, Adi, every, like Adi, etc. is a very nice word, right? Did we not use the word etc. when giving our school exams?
Yes.
And when we didn't know the answer, then etc. was a very nice filler, right? How many battles did he fight? Well, he fought the battle of Palasi, etc. And then we would get a false sense, like, we have answered the question. But we have to be precise and detailed, right? And any of these roaming senses can go. But what was the good news? There was a good news that we heard in chapter number 3 of Bhagavad-gita. Chapter number 3, I think it's chapter number 3 of Bhagavad-gita. Yeah. Of all these senses. Let me bring that up here for us to relish that verse. And it says, Indriyani paranyahur Indrebhya param manaha manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe parasastu saha. So he's saying the working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Right? So senses are different outlets for the activities of the lust. Right? And we saw how Kekai used all these outlets, to satisfy her own lust. Her lust was to become the head, most respected maidservant. It was not that she really cared for Kekai. She was caring for herself. That was the motivation for her trying to bring this thing there, right? So these brahmacharis are going to use their intelligence and their mind, and they're going to control all these senses. And he's saying the Yagya Kunda becomes their mind, right? The control which they're using. And in that process, they are going to sacrifice all these sense enjoyments. They're going to sacrifice that, right? And then one thing very important, that Srimad Bhagavatam, right? How can we avoid that? So we say that sense organ, the ear is a powerful sense organ. Shraddha-devi Dasi. So they are saying you do it, right? Do this. But the question is that how do we do it, right? And so very nice verse that glorifies the sound vibration, which is from the second canto of Bhagavatam, 4th chapter, and the verse number is 15. where this whole chapter is about the creation process. So in the beginning, they're just praying. So here they say, let me offer my respectful obeisances. Actually, the verse is very beautiful. I'll just bring it. Yeah. Yad kirtanam, yad smaranam, yad ikshanam, yad vandanam, yad shravanam, yad arhanam. Lokasya sadhyo budhinoti kalmasham, tasmai subhadra shavase namo namaha. So they're doing this nice prayer to the Lord. They're saying, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all auspicious Lord Sri Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrances, audience, prayers, hearing, and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of the performer. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The sublime form of religious performances to free oneself from all reactions of sins is suggested hereby by the great authority Shri Sukadeva Goswami. Kirtanam, or glorifying the Lord, can be performed in many ways, such as remembering, visiting temples to see the deity, offering prayers in front of the Lord, and hearing recitations of glorification of the Lord mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad-gita. Kirtanam can be performed both by singing the glories of the Lord accompanied with melodious music and by recitation of scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad-gita. The devotees need not be disappointed in the physical absence of the Lord, though they may think of not being associated with him. The devotional process of chanting, hearing, remembering, etc., either all of them or some of them or even one of them, can give us the desired result of associating with the Lord by discharging the transcendental loving service of the Lord in the above manner. Even the very sound of the holy name of Krishna or Ram can at once surcharge the atmosphere spiritually. We must know definitely that the Lord is present wherever such pure transcendental service is performed, and thus the performer of offenseless kirtanam has positive association with the Lord. Similarly, remembrance and prayers can also give us the desired result if they are properly done under expert guidance. One should not concord forms of devotional service. One may worship the form of the Lord in a temple, or one may impersonally offer the Lord devotional prayers in a mosque or in a church. One is sure to get free from the reactions of sins, provided one is very careful about not committing sins willingly in expectation of getting free from the reactions by worshipping in the temple or by offering prayers in the church. This mentality of committing sins willfully on the strength of devotional service is called namno balad yasahi papa buddhi, and it is the greatest offense in the discharge of devotional service. Namno balad yasi papi buddhi means namno, the name of the Holy Lord, balad means strength, right? Papa buddhi, if you are doing offenses, relying on the strength of the holy name, that I'm chanting so I can do this because chanting is going to nullify everything, then that is the greatest offense in the discharge of devotional service. Hearing, therefore, is essential in order to keep oneself strictly on guard against such pitfalls of sins. And in order to give special stress to the hearing process, the Goswami invokes all auspicious fortune in this matter. So, hearing the holy names of the Lord. And tomorrow is Radha Ashtami. So I was just thinking of, doing something that we had been doing a lot, which was, we used to recite 5 prayers. Does anybody remember?
Vidyarthi Panchaka.
Vidyarthi Panchaka. There you go. Bingo. Right? And so let's go and see where I have the Vidyarthi Panchaka. They were there in my nityasankirtan.com website, right? And when I went to the nityasankirtan.com website, actually, I found a very nice prayer there, which glorifies the holy names of the Lord. And let me just do that. Bring it up here. Wrong window here. And I'm going to start sharing it. And I realize it has some very beautiful pictures also, which we can all engage our eyes in looking at this beautiful picture. So this is glories of the holy name of the Lord. And we have Krishna's deity. Look at the intricacy of everything which is there. Look at his crown, right? So nice. And so we will start from the bottom. Look at his feet here. So very beautiful. And I think there's Radharani next to him there. Conch shell, the beautiful clothes he has. Look at the necklace, right? The pearls over here, the bracelets. Look at the beautiful flute. He has the nose ring, the garland, the necklace, the earrings, the crown, peacock feather, the beautiful curly hair. Look at the curly hair coming here, right? Beautiful eyes like lotus. Beautiful Krishna. And here from Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll talk about a verse, but before that, Radharani. Beautiful Radharani. Yeah. Beautiful. Right? And then from Srimad Bhagavatam 5.25.11, Yannama Shrutam Anukirtayet Akasmad Arto va yadi patita pralambhanad va hantyam hasan sapadi nirnam asheshamanyam kam sheshad bhagavata asrayen mumukshuhu. So what it says, even if he be distressed or degraded, any person who chants the holy name of the Lord, having heard it from a bona fide spiritual master, is immediately purified. Even if he chants the Lord's name jokingly or by chance, he and anyone who hears him or are freed from all sins. Therefore, how can anyone seeking disentanglement from the material clutches avoid chanting the name of Lord Shesha? Of whom else should one take shelter? So jokingly or by chance, if he and anyone hears him, even in a joke, if you hear the name of the Lord. So powerful is the hearing sense, right? So how do we control our sense of hearing? You know, Gramya katha na karibe, Rama katha na sunibe. That's the first thing. It's a very bad thing to gossip and to talk about. Gramya katha means mundane topics. Who's going out with whom, you know, what's going to happen, things like that, right? So never do that. And then instead substitute all the Gramya katha with transcendental vibration. Yeah. Sumi Mataji.
Oh yeah, with Krishna Katha.
Krishna Katha. There you go. So replace that with Krishna Katha. Yeah. Right. So this was half of the verse for today. Shrotadini indriyani anye. Right. And then what do others do? What was the second part of the verse?
Shabdadin vishyam anye
Shabd
nishu juyuti.
Right. So the other part that was coming, let me share my screen here with you. The other part is saying that the unadulterated brahmacharis sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. They will control it, right? And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses, right? So very interesting thing that in some places we see, let me see, where am I? Yeah. In some places we see that, for example, if we take the case of King Yayati. Now we had talked about King Yayati and we had talked about his story in a very different context. And we were talking about all that when in the context of getting anger and, you know. So what had happened was that once there were Devyani, who is the daughter of Shukracharya. Who is Shukracharya?
Shukracharya was a spiritual master of
Demons.
Demons, yes. Right. Bali Maharaj, yeah. Right. So he's a spiritual master, and he had a son, he had a daughter called Devyani. Right. And then so Devyani was out with her friends. They were, you know, swimming in a lake. And then they saw Shiva and Parvati pass by. So immediately, as a matter of respect, they picked up the clothes and started dressing themselves up. And so in that hustle and bustle, what happened was that Devyani's friend, Sharmishtha, she put on Devyani's clothes. And Devyani became very angry with Sharmishtha. So when Devyani became angry with Sharmishtha, she spoke some words, tongue. So she spoke some words, and when Sharmishtha heard them, she was not happy at all. She got angry. And so she took Devyani and she pushed her into a well and went away. Now Devyani is inside the well and she's shouting, help, help, help. And then Maharaj Yayati came there. And when Maharaj Yayati came there, Maharaj Yayati took her out of the well. And so obviously he became her savior. So, or protector. And another name for protector is Pati, right? Rashpati, Gajpati, like that, right? So Ganapati. So similarly, he had become her Pati, and so she said that I want to marry you, and so he married her. And but she was still very angry. So all this happened, and then she goes to her father, narrates all that incident, and she's very angry with Sarmishta that Sarmishta had taken her clothes. So her father, who's Devyani's father? Shukracharya, right? So Shukracharya was a very powerful sage at that time, or a guru at that time. And Sarmishta was the daughter of his disciple. And so his disciple's daughter behaved like that to the guru's daughter, right? It's like very bad. So he gets very angry, and he goes to, curse him. So he starts walking to the disciple's home, but the disciple senses that, knows all that had happened. So he, even before the spiritual master can come to his house, he runs out of his house, falls flat in front of the spiritual master, and he says, "Forgive me." So Shukracharya, and pacifies him. So Shukracharya is pacified because this Sarmishta's father said that your daughter is already getting married to Yayati. Let my daughter go as her maid servant. So in those days, when a lady was married, some maid servants were sent with her, especially if she's getting married to a king, things like that. So Sarmishta then goes there. And so she's living there with Devyani, serving her. And then soon Devyani gets pregnant, and she has a son. So when she gets pregnant, Sarmishta starts to feel jealous. And so what she does is, at the appropriate time, she approaches the king and says, "I want to have a son." And in those days, if you ask a Kshatriya for a son, the Kshatriya is obligated to give the son. So she also gets a son. And now when Devyani comes to know about it, she gets angry again. So when she gets angry again, she goes back again to her father and says, "Look at her, you had sent Sarmishta, now she's pregnant." So then the father becomes very angry, and he curses Yayati. He curses Yayati, and he says that may you become an old man and lose all your youth. So in the Bhagavatam, then there is a very nice story of how, he loses his youth, but then he tells to Shukracharya that, "Shukracharya, I'm not yet done enjoying with your daughter and fulfilling all my lusty desires with your daughter. So do something about it." So then Shukracharya says, "Okay, if somebody is willing to exchange, take away your old age and give you their youth, then that's fine. You can do that." Right? So now look at that. Now see how strong the senses are. That the king went and requested his sons. So he requested his first son, and he said, "Can you exchange?" And the first son said no. And he gives a very nice explanation in the Bhagavatam. He said that, "I am a married man, and I have a wife, and my own senses are not controlled yet. So I can't give you. I want to stay young and complete and fulfill my desires, because after these desires are fulfilled, I will be able to focus on the Lord. Until and unless these desires are not fulfilled, I won't be able to fulfill my desires." So because of that, he refuses to give his youth to his father. So it's a very interesting thing. His other sons also said no, but their reasons were not the same. The first son's reasons were that, "No, I want to do this because," again, what they are saying from this verse, what he's doing is that he knows that he has got lusty desires, but he wants to stay in the ashram, the shelter of the grihastha ashram with his wife. And he will indulge, but in a very controlled manner, not with everybody's wife, like Yayati is doing, or every other woman, like Yayati is doing, but controlled with only indulge with his one wife, right? Or like, people indulge and say that, "I won't eat this on a Saturday, I will fast on this day," and so on and so forth. So what we're doing is we are controlling our senses, but very little. Or like on Ekadashi, we won't eat grains, but we'll eat other things, right? Grain is not allowed. So eating is allowed. You're controlling your eating by eating only prescribed things like that. So the second part of the verse is actually telling us that we need to, some people, what they will do is it's not that they give up the sense gratification completely, as he had said, as the brahmacharis do, right? They can't do that, right? They can't do that, but they will do it in a controlled manner. So then what they're saying is that in this fire of, sense control, doing it in a rationed manner, that is the fire in which they will put all the senses inside there. And later on in the story of Yayati, his youngest son actually exchanges. His youngest son exchanges his youth and takes the old age from his father. And the father lives on with his wife, Devyani. And after living for a very long time with his wife and enjoying his wife, Devyani, then one day he sits there and he tells his whole story to his wife in the form of a, story, in a story form, not directly using those names, but then he says there was a he goat and there was a she goat. And once the she goat fell into the water, into a well, and the he goat came and pulled her out, and then they got married, but then there was another she goat, and the whole story of his life he narrates, and then Devyani understands that. But one of the main things that King Yayati tells Devyani is that this is like, insatiable fire. The more ghee that you add to a fire, it'll just keep on burning unless you control it, Say, I'm going to add only this much of ghee into the fire, right? And later on, so then he says that, we should stop. Whatever we're doing, we should focus on the Lord now. We are done with our indulging, and which he does, which he did ultimately. He attained perfection, and actually Devyani, in association with him, also attained perfection there completely. So these two verses are, in two different ways, two different people, two different sets of people will control their senses, right? One will just not indulge at all, and others will indulge, but in a controlled manner, which is also a very difficult thing to do, because now you know the taste, right, of the senses. And then after tasting all these nice things, then to say, I'm going to control it is really, really something appreciable and can be applauded like that. Right?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Did he ever gave back the youth to his son or no?
I think he gave back. I think if I remember correctly, yeah, but don't quote me. Yeah, I think he does give him back. In a sense, yeah, when he realizes that there's no point. This is an insatiable fire. It'll go on. Yeah. But the son who gave it back, I'm guess like he was such an exalted soul, right? Didn't even need it, I guess, by then. Yeah.
And Mataji, since today you brought up Ramayana, Lord Rama, Devaki Ma asked Lord Krishna that why is it that I had to suffer so much? I stayed in the prison, and you see, you were far away. And Krishna, is it correct? I don't know. That is why I'm asking. That you were KK, and that is why you had to give me birth. You loved me, no doubt. You gave me birth, but you had to be Yashoda, and you could not. You had to be Devaki, and that is why, you see, you had to suffer the separation with me. Is this correct? Is this statement somewhere in the Shastras?
I have heard about it, but I don't recall whether I read it in the Bhagavatam that she was like that. But I've heard people say that Devaki was Kekai, of the Ramayana, reborn, like that. I've heard that, but not necessarily from the Bhagavatam. Yeah. Because every time the Devaki and Vasudeva, every time, like even as Prishni Gharma, when she's Prishni, then also Krishna comes and they are there. So she gives birth to Krishna many times in the previous also, in his previous avatars also. Yeah. Yeah. So today I just wanted to spend some time doing our old thing, which was the Vigyapti Panchaka verses. Are we up for it? Okay. So anybody remember? We did it almost 2 years ago, so it's okay if you forgot. But there are verses from the Padma Purana that open your mind to Radha and Krishna. And because this is Radharani's appearance day tomorrow, we pray to Radharani to help us improve and excel in our devotional service to her, and to Lord Krishna, and that she help us find a way to Lord Krishna. Thank you, Radharani, for considering our request. Hare Krishna. So let it be interactive. If somebody is close and able to read, then who would like to read the first verse here? Any takers?
I can read Mataji.
Okay, go ahead, read it, Garima. The first
Matsamo
verse.
nasti papatma na paradi cha kaśchana parihare pilajjame kim bhuve purushottama.
Very nice.
I can read second, Mataji.
Okay, go for the second.
Yuvatīnām yathā yūni, yūnām cho yuvato yathā, manōpi ramate tadvan, mano me ramatam tvayi.
Very nice. Who would like to read the translation?
Okay, Mataji. O Purushottama, O sinner or offender,
No,
is,
no sinner.
is
No sinner.
no sinner, sorry. O Purushottama, no sinner or offender is as bad as I am. How can I describe my shame? Just as the minds of young ladies take pleasure in a young man, and the minds of young men take pleasure in the young woman, kindly let my mind take pleasure in you alone.
Okay, then who would like to take the next verse?
Mataji, can I go?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bhumau skalita padanam bhumir eva lambanam tvai jata paradhanam tvam eva sharanam prabhu.
All right, translation. Who's going to take that? Okay, if nobody is going to take it, you can go second round. Who wants to speak?
I could do it, Mataji. Sorry, I was just like, sorry about that.
Okay. Go ahead.
So just as the ground is the only support for those whose feet have slipped, you alone are the only shelter for those who have offended you.
Very nice. Next verse.
Hare Krishna, may I do it?
Sure.
Govinda Vallabhe Radhe Prarthaye Tvam Am Sada Twadiyam Iti Janatu Govindo Mama Tvaya Saha.
Very nice. And then?
O Srimati Radharani, beloved of Lord Govinda, this is my request. May you and Lord Govinda consider me one of your assistants.
Very nice. Who wants to do the last verse?
I can do last, Mataji.
Okay.
Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nija Padabhya Dasyam Mahayam Pradiyatam.
Very nice. Translation.
I can read. O Srimati Radharani, O Queen of Vrindavana, you are a river flowing with the nectar of mercy. Please be kind to me and give me a little service at your lotus feet.
Very nice. So, very nice. Thank you, Mataji, for reading. So, how do you think about the river of mercy?
It reminds me of those early morning COVID days classes. Varshana Mataji always used to say, give me a little service at your lotus feet.
Yeah. COVID days there was some goodness in COVID days also.
Yes.
Yeah.
The best part is of the COVID, Mataji, that these classes started online, and actually more and more nectar started going to everybody.
Right. And especially you got new network in your home, because earlier you used to be like, give me a separate phone call. You used to be on the phone. Others used to be there. And then finally you came on the phone, on the Zoom. Yeah. And then we went into Facebook. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. So then the key here is just to wrap up today's class. The key here is to sense control. So as you can see, how Kṛṣṇa is telling the various grades and various types in which people can give up things, right? First was give up your worldly possessions. Second was to give up yourself in the Brahma Jyoti, but you're going to fall down soon from there. Today it was like, control your senses completely. And then others was like not completely, but indulge in senses in a very controlled manner. Like that. Yeah. Okay, so should we call it a day on this class here today? Oh, you had a question, Varshana Mataji? I saw you raise your hand.
Mother, I was just thinking that that Shraddha-devi Vishyan Anya. Can you kindly tell me once again, because
Shraddha-devi Vishyan Anya. Okay, let me bring up the words again here, so the others can also see. Share and here. So here he's saying Shabda. Shabda means sound, right? Shabda din Vishyan Anya, right? So Shabda means sound. Adi means etc. Right? So here saying Shabda Adi means sound, etc. Vishyan, objects of the sense, right? So Vishyan, let's take the Vishyan. So what is the object of the eyes, the sense of seeing? What is the object of that? What do eyes try to see? Form, right? So that's the object. Similarly, another sense is sense of smell, right? For that, the organ is the nose. And what is the object is the odor, right? What can the nose tell you? Nose can only tell you the smell of something, right? It cannot tell you the shape of something. It cannot tell you the temperature of something, right? So that is what it means. The object of a sense means that, right? Similarly, the skin is the sense of touch, right? So the object is, the texture or, that thing. So what he's saying that Shabda-dini Vishyan. So Anya means others. So what is it? Anya come here? This Anya is coming from the previous verse, where in the previous verse we had said people either give their well-earned money and possessions to the demigods, or they give it themselves to the Brahma Jyoti. So having talked about that, now Krishna says Anya. Anya means others. What do others do? Well, one of the set of others is the Shrota-dini, hearing processes. They will do the samyam. They will completely restrain it, the brahmacharis. And among the others that he's talking about, the second group is those who will indulge in sense gratification, but in a controlled manner. That is why Prabhupada over here says, therefore, current in all civilized human society, therefore, marriage on the principles of religious life is therefore current in all religious society. What does marriage do? Marriage doesn't allow you to go and have relationships with anybody and everybody. Your desire to have sex has to be fulfilled in a controlled manner. You can only engage in bodily relationship with your spouse, nothing else. If somebody else does that, then it is called adultery, and adultery is a very easy ground for divorce, right? Very, very easily people get, because you have broken the very basis of marriage, like that. So Indra-dini Vishyan Anya, that's what it means.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. So take care. Remember, lowest is the dull matter. Above the dull matter are the senses. Above the senses is the mind. Above the mind is the intelligence. And above the intelligence is you, soul. You can control everything. We just need to pray to Krishna to allow us to do that. And empower us. Yeah. 342. Very nice. Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha gopremanande hari hari bol. Dandavat pranam, dear devotees. Thank you for joining us on Facebook as well as joining us here. Good to see you, Swami Mataji, and really waiting and counting days when you come to Silicon Valley and we participate in Guru Puja of our spiritual master together. Hare Krishna. Hari bol.
Hari bol, Mataji. Thank you so much.